Mario, we're calling the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. This is the Select Board meeting. Mr. Brewer had previous plans for this evening. As Vice Chair, I'm starting the meeting. It's Monday, April 22nd. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, this meeting is being recorded. We welcome comments from the Chair. Just to let everybody know, the rabies clinic will be going on May 4th. $15 for non-residents, free to Westport residents. I believe you just show up for this, right? There's no previous registration, so you just show up May 4th at the Hicksbridge Fire Station, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. We'd also like to recognize, last week was dispatcher and also animal control appreciation week, I believe it was, and we thank them for their service and for all they do for the town. Another recognition we need to do, unfortunately we had a passing. It was Raymond Larner, who was 13 years at the landfill. And he also was a veteran of the U.S. Army. Appreciate his service to the town and the country. All right, we'll move right on. Anything else? Did I get everything? Very good. All right, first thing is reorganization of the board. Do we have anybody that wants to take the big seat?
I would be happy to be served as chair.
All right.
I move Shauna Schufeld be elected as chair of the board.
Do we have a second? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Yeah, we have one against. You can take over from here.
So then we need a vice chair. Is anybody willing to serve as vice chair?
I'll stay on if you guys want me to.
I'll move Steve as vice chair.
I'll second. Any discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. You want me to take it, Steve?
Oh, you want to just say
Right,
that?
wait a
That's
second.
fine. Yeah. You want to say that?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
The first item on the agenda, or the next item agenda, is a request from New England Race Events LLC to hold the Horse Neck Half Marathon and 3.5 mile run on Sunday, May 19 from 9 to 1, along with a request for a one-day wine and malt license for the event. Is there anyone here for this event? I do want to point out that the police have recommended approval, but they noted that East Beach Road is still not in super great shape, and the marathon is planning to run on that road. Is that right?
That's right, yes. Did that change? They were looking, you had mentioned.
No, the marathon did not change.
Okay.
All right. So, it's my understanding we have recommendation from the town administrator to recommend approval, but to advise the organizers that it's possible that that road will not be paved by the time of the event.
I'll move with the police recommendation with details. And so the public knows that's on Sunday, May 19th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request from Yellowfin Events LLC to hold the Bikes and Beers cycling event that partners with Buzzards Bay Brewing and benefits the Buzzards Bay Coalition and the South Coast Bikeway Alliance on Saturday, May 18, 2024, from 8 a.m. to 12:30. And this again, the town administrator has recommended approval, but again, it's the day before the other event, so the road might not be completed at the time.
I'll move with the recommendations. I'll bike and.
The police are not recommending
They gave
this
another
for the-
recommendation.
Oh, they're not.
I'm sorry. That was the one.
They are recommended that they change their route. They gave 2 routes, and they're recommending that they change their route.
Okay, so we're on the, Gail's pushing that too, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's the one that called me about it.
All right, listen,
So what do we want to do?
send it back to Gail. We have a meeting before that. It's going to be getting close, but if the police advise against it, we don't want to have safety issues.
All right, so we're going to pass over or
Yeah, send it back to Gail
table this
Roberts.
one and go back to the organizers with the police recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay, is that okay? Or are you good with that?
I missed that, I thought.
We have a request from the Holy Ghost Club of Westport, 171 Sodom Road, for one-day all alcohol liquor licenses for Friday, May 17 for a clam boil from 5 to 10, Saturday, May 25th for a graduation from 4 to 9, and Monday, May 27 for a reunion from 12 to 5. Did we get police recommendation on this one?
Yes.
all set? I'll move
Second?
recommendations.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request from Ben Walbeck to be reappointed to the Economic Development Task Force.
So moved. Ben's been on it for a couple of years. He runs our market and whatnot, so he's an asset to the town.
Do you want a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Do you want to say anything? You don't have to. No? Okay.
We'll be back.
They got something on it.
They're coming back to talk. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
They've got 4A.
Then we have 3B, request from the Southeastern Regional Planning Economic Development, SERPID, to appoint a joint transportation planning group member, Jim Hartnett and Michael Burris as alternate.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? You're already serving in this now, right?
We are,
This is
yes.
just a joint reappointment. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request from the Southeastern Regional Planning Economic SERPID again to appoint a commissioner.
That's from the selectmen, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'll stay on if you want me to stay on. Jim, you staying on?
If I'm voted in.
There you go. Two
Or
amigos.
do we need to tonight vote both of you?
I think the
No, it's
planning
just,
board.
he's planning board.
The planning board
votes.
votes
Yeah,
him,
he's-
okay. So,
He's-
did I hear a motion? I'll
can't
entertain
move.
I'm entertaining a motion to appoint
I move.
Steve as the commissioner.
Yeah,
Aye, so
give me a
moved.
second.
In second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Thanks.
that's unanimous. We have a request from Craig Dutra, Select Board member, to be appointed as Select Board representative to the Affordable Housing Trust
Put him
Fund.
right to work, I move it.
I'll second. Any discussion? I just have a question. Are there other positions that Ann had that are now vacant on the Select Board? Or can you look
She
at
was
that
on
for the
yours.
next
Was she
meeting?
Manny, long-term?
She was on the long-term building
Yeah.
committee too, I think, but can you just check what else she was in?
Yeah. I know those two. She was on COA, but I think Dick
I
took
think
that
Dick
over,
took
right?
that over, yeah. All right, so to appoint Craig to the Affordable Housing Trust. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request from the Cemetery Department to appoint David Actel as seasonal laborer. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah,
Jim?
David's been there the last couple of years. He's kind of been in and out, but he seems to be ready and willing to work, and we haven't had a lot of applicants, and he knows the system, he knows the people, and I'd recommend approval.
I'll
This
move.
would be a seasonal appointment.
Move.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request to accept the resignation of Betty Ann Mullins from the Westport Affordable Housing Trust Fund effective immediately.
Motion to accept and send a letter of thanks for her service.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
I would suggest that we also send a letter. She was representing herself, but she was appointed by Bay Coast Bank to that position. And so maybe we would advise, I think he already knows, but advise the CEO of Bay Coast Bank that we have a vacancy, and would he have another employee who might be interested that he would recommend for this?
Yeah, that sounds
All
good.
right.
Can you- Paula, can you check? Okay. 4A, request from the Economic Development Task Force. You guys can come forward to authorize the 2024 farmers markets consisting of the summer markets for 20 consecutive Saturday mornings from June 1 to October 12 from 9 to 1. The winters markets are 5 mornings from November 16, 23rd, December 7, 14, and 21, also from 9 to 1. And a request to hang the banner advertising the events. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Maury May. I'm the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Task Force. And we have Ben Walbeck, who with his wife Hannah are our market managers. I do a lot of paperwork. They actually do the market.
And I'd like to add Manny's on it too. Maury got a nice grant, so we'll have a lot of entertainment there this year. What'd you get, 3,000?
This year, we've gotten grants from the Helen Ellis Trust from the Westport Cultural Council for a number of years, but this year we got 3,000, which is a new high.
Yeah.
And
So
so
should be plenty of entertainment.
we'll have music at the markets. It's very popular. You can explain the reasons, because you started
Yeah,
it,
we
really.
started doing music when Hannah and I took over running the market, and It's been really popular with customers, but also musicians just are really happy for a paying gig.
Yeah.
So I have musicians contacting me, out of season, like, asking when it's gonna be available and stuff like that. So it's really popular. And-
Just let you know, if we get you two of the Rolling Stones, we're gonna need more security there. That just to give you a heads up. And more parking.
Parking.
You can't get the Rolling Stones for $100.
All right, I'll move
So,
that. Well,
okay,
go
is
ahead.
that, I just wanted to see, Ben might want to explain a little bit more about the markets and the vendors that
Yeah,
they have
please
at the
do.
markets.
Sure. Yeah, we're at this point mostly just trying to push repeat. The market's pretty successful for the farmers that attend, and we have a pretty nice slate of other vendors, crafters and artisans and such. So we have quite a following. So we're not looking to do much more than just keep going. It's been expanded to be both summer and winter. The winter markets are just 2 Saturdays before Thanksgiving and then 3 before Christmas. And those are inside the gym and have been really well attended, both in terms of vendors and in terms of customers. So we're just trying to keep going.
All right, so we have a motion to approve these. Did we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
For B, we have a request from the Westport Macomber Parent Teacher Organization, WestMac PTO, to hang the banner promoting the Tough Kids Challenge from 5/13/24 to 6/9. The event is being held on 6/9, June 9, 2024, Tough Kids Challenge.
Yep, I'll move it, and the previous one included the banner too, but we're pretty good with that. They can switch it around or whatever they gotta do.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request from Carol Freitas, the Veteran Service Officer, to accept a $25 donation from Mr. and Mrs. Edward Thieberge in memory of Paul Kirsten Sr. for the Veterans Food Pantry.
Motion accepted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. We have a request to approve the Kleinfelder Northeast Amendment 4B for $45,350, with the funding source being the Bristol County American Rescue Plan Act funds. This is for the test borings and permitting. Jim, do you want to give us a little more information on this one?
Yeah, so this was requested by the board. This will cover the test borings on the Macomber Loop, which would be on Osborne Street and Gifford Road. So they're designing water right now and sewer. The test borings will identify any ledge or large boulders in the rocks. They will put some monitoring wells. We're still going back and forth with them as to what the monitoring wells will cover. But we're working on that. This was requested. This has already pretty much been approved by the board. We just got the contract and asking if the board approve the contract.
Any discussion?
Move it.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
As far as so we had a discussion the other day, and we were talking about the environmental assessment on Route 6. You said that you talked to Kleinfeld, and they didn't do it, but I reviewed the report, so the geotech contractor did do it, so it's in the report. And I haven't fully read it, but it's all there. And I believe that's the same thing that has to be done in Macomber. So the one thing with that is you might want to ask Kleinfeld. I'm sure the geotech gave them that report because the planner didn't get it from Kleinfeld. So I think we need to find out what our obligation is with that report, because they should have given that report to the town administrator and then what we're supposed to do with that report. So if you can find that out, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I have the report. I've been through the report. The geo assessment was more on the materials. They did do some monitoring wells out there, and I'll follow up with that.
Well, there is an environmental assessment there too.
My understanding is that environmental assessment was done when Mass Highway did the work. They did the, you know the term there, licensed site professionals do the work for contaminated sites with gas spillage, oil tanks that leak, and they were required to do an environmental assessment on each one of those properties. When Mass DOT went in and surveyed the original Route 6, which we use for our design, we got copies of those environmental assessments, so it is part of the report.
So I'm assuming that Mass DOT at that point in time notified the DEP of that report.
I don't know. I'm not sure what
So I
Mass.
think you should look into that.
Is there anything else on this Kleinfelder contract?
Yeah, because what I'm getting at is, so what Mass DOT did in that situation, we need to do the same thing in this situation. So that's why we need to do that environmental assessment. And our findings from that need to be reported to the DEP.
So are you suggesting that's separate from this contract, or are you suggesting that we should
that's
not
part of
approve
it.
this
No,
contract?
No, that's in this contract.
It's in this
Just wanna
contract
make sure
already?
that it's-
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other discussion? Did we have a motion?
Yes.
We did.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request to accept the following donations to the Council on Aging totaling $315. Patricia Herman, $15 tax help. Dolores Lemeries, $20 in memory of Maria Sylvia. Orakaya, $5 outreach. Dolores Spell, $25 tax help. Pacific Coast Congregational Church, $250 for SDP scholarships.
I'll move to accept, that's a total of $315.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request to approve the Mass Audubon Plover monitoring contract for $11,000. Jim, you want to talk us through this one?
Yeah, so this is a yearly contract with Mass Audubon. They monitor the beach, Cherry and Webb, Beach Avenue, as well as parts of the East Beach for piping plovers. They certify the lifeguards as monitors when the vehicles are on the beach. So if the vehicles are driving around, they will watch in front to make sure that there is no damage. This is required as far as the beach management plan for Cherry and Webb and Beach Avenue. Takes a little bit of liability off the town as well, because the Audubon is responsible for making sure we comply with the regulations.
All right, I'll move it. Seemed like it was more this year, I don't know what last year was.
It is, it went up a few $1,000s. I had a meeting with her last week. She kind of went through we discussed it. She said they're charging us less than they normally charge to begin with. And this kind of brought it up a little bit, but we're still supposedly getting a decent deal. They are down there quite a bit. They're down there in the mornings, they're down there in the
Yeah, I've seen
evenings.
that.
They follow up with reports. And
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We have a request to approve the following American Rescue Plan Act projects, ARPA. Information technology upgrades for $100,000, street improvements, including East Beach Road repairs, White Oak Run layout, and various other streets for $357,237. So this is a total of $457,237 with the funding source of the Bristol County ARPA. We are required to obligate the ARPA funds by June. So we had to have projects that are contract ready, and we'll get through the application process in time for that, or we're going to lose the Bristol County ARPA money. Jim, do you want to give us some more information?
yeah, so the IT funds would be used for software upgrades within various departments throughout the town, looking for some additional laptops, looking for some hardware upgrades as far as the switches go, and some of the other stuff that I'm not that familiar with that Keith works on. It's something that needs to be done. All the items have not been identified, but I've been told that there's sufficiently more items that need to be done than the 100,000 will cover, so this will cover a good portion of it. As far as the streets go, what we're looking to do is offset some. So each year the town goes out for a contract, and we use Chapter 90 funds to construct the roads. And the roads they're looking at this year are Main Road, Drift Road to Hicks Bridge, Main Road Cemetery to Adamsville Road, and Main Road Charlotte White to the high school. That's the current Chapter 90, and the thought is if we can offset some of those costs with Bristol County money, we can obligate it before June, and then we would have the additional Chapter 90 money that we could use at a later date. I believe with the PFAS grant that there's a good chance we're gonna need some of that money to repave Osborne Street and Gifford Road. So this will give us the ability to do that if the contract price comes in over the $4 million.
All right, how much money do we have left in there that we have to utilize, do you know?
It's pretty much all of it.
Yeah,
gets rid of
this
the
would
chunk.
cover it with the design money for the Macumber neighborhood. I think we're right there.
So we're looking good. All right.
And I just want to say the ARPA committee did look at these and recommended their
All right,
approval.
well, yeah, obviously we have to utilize it. I'll move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Discussion items. We have discussion item 5A, Climate Resiliency Committee, East Beach recommendations. So I'm familiar with this, but is there anybody here to talk about it?
Yes.
Okay, you guys want to? So just to start out here, so you'll recall that this board, when we were having some of our East Beach discussions, we referred some of the recommendations that we had from the public, we referred them to the Climate Resiliency Committee to seek their guidance. So the Climate Resilience Committee has sent a letter back with the recommendations based on that guidance. So they're not, it's basically the Climate Resilience Committee work is done on this. They're advising us on what they think we should do. So are you prepared to talk about this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So there are 7 recommendations that came out of the last Climate Resilience Committee meeting. I'll just go over them very briefly. The committee recommended to defer medium and long-term East Beach policy recommendations until the Buzzards Bay Coalition Gooseberry Causeway study is published, and that the preliminary results for that should be available sometime this summer is what we understand, and the official publication will be later in the year, I believe. The committee recommended that the select board draft and implement a highway department policy whereby storm deposited cobble on East Beach Road is pushed onto the town right-of-way towards the southerly lots, and I believe that has already happened in a previous select board meeting. The committee recommended, to the degree practicable, the equivalent quantity of cobble removed from East Beach Road be returned and replaced on the beach from whence it came. The committee recommended a policy of preservation for East Beach, which means preserving East Beach as a coastal research for future generations through means like beach nourishment or maintaining public infrastructure such as East Beach Road. The committee recommended that the select board identify and pursue financial resources to offer lot owners on East Beach. It is an option to voluntarily sell their lots outright or with retained life tenancy for that landowner who sold that lot. The committee recommended the select board pursue coordination with Eversource and Department of Conservation and Recreation, who is the owner of the overhead electrical on John Reed Road, to relocate the overhead electrical on East Beach Road because it's where it's positioned right now is very vulnerable to storm events. And lastly, the committee recommended that the board pursue means to protect East Beach Road from future overwash and flood damage, starting out with looking at a conceptual plan to raise the road in the East Beach Municipal Vulnerability Report. We also have, just if you can make a copy and just circulate this around the table. There's a series of recommendations that have also come from our planning board. The planning board met last week on Tuesday, and in similar sort of way as was outlined earlier, that the Climate Resilience Committee was asked to provide some input, so was the planning board. And so there are 4 recommendations that came from that meeting. The first is to repave East Beach Road so that it's passable with 1 lane in each direction, noting that future maintenance may need to be considered in a beach management plan. And we'll talk about the beach management plan portion in a second. When there's overwash of East Beach Road, push the cobble and other barrier beach compatible materials to the southerly edge of the road right of way. Again, this is something that's already been addressed in a previous select board meeting. ensure that the town complies with its permitting and bylaw obligations, particularly as it applies to the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program is a program that the town participates in through its floodplain zoning bylaw, which provides residents benefits like having access to flood insurance and being able to access disaster recovery assistance were there to be a major storm event. The thing with the National Flood Insurance Program is that there are standards that you have to ensure that all development in the floodplain is compliant with. And so the planning board would like to underscore that this is a really important resource for the community, and so need to make sure that we're continuing to apply those regulations to all development in the floodplain. And that's not just East Beach exclusive, that's for the entire town. Similarly with trailer permits, just making sure that when the trailer permits are being issued through the select board, just making sure that that aligns with when they expire in the town's bylaws. In the town bylaw, they expire on June 30th, so just making sure that those permits are issued accordingly. Also, it's recommended that the building inspector, because he is the town's designated floodplain administrator, it would be best to have him sign off on, at least be signatory to those permits to, as an official check on saying, yes, this is a development that's reasonably safe from flooding. Reasonably safe from flooding is the FEMA standard, and there's a whole set of guidelines available. That's later on, there's a bit of a report here for you all, and you can see those guidelines in that document. And lastly, the planning board has recommended that the select board apply for coastal zone management grant funds to develop that beach management plan that I had referenced earlier. This would be for all of Westport's barrier beaches, not just exclusive to each beach. And the purpose of this plan is to define the town's goals for barrier beach maintenance and developing objectives to achieve those goals. So looking at what the permitting needs might be, what kind of access rights the town might need to acquire to implement these projects, project development and material costs. And then depending on the location of the beaches that we're looking at, there would be recommendations for things like beach nourishment, dune plantings, dune restoration, things like that. I mean, what would be recommended would be context or location specific, but and then this would give the town a more precise plan of action for addressing some of the vulnerabilities on barrier beaches.
Isn't the CM RFP relatively soon?
It may have been released as of last week, or it will be released this week. We met with Rebecca Haney from Coastal Zone Management last week to talk about coming up with a beach management plan for East Beach and other locations. And yes, we talked about this grant as well, and we were advised that if it wasn't last week when we had met with them, it was imminent, so sometime here very soon.
Okay.
Anything else? Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate what Michael was referring to with CZM, who we met with last week in this office. They would consider a grant for beach nourishment for East Beach. In other words, to pay 75% of what it costs, we'd have to come up with 25%. But it would have to be, it couldn't be the homeowners association that are on East Beach, it'd have to be the municipality who does this. And to do that, we would need to have a public benefit. In other words, we would have to show that there's a public benefit for doing beach nourishment on this private property. And that public betterment would probably be the ability for Westporters to walk along the beach and enjoy the beach in front of all those lots. And that would be something that would have to be agreed to beforehand. And also, we would have to have easements to all of those lots without exception. We couldn't have 10 on one side and 20 on the other side, but the one in the middle didn't give an easement, because then you couldn't really do beach nourishment. So I think we have things to think about what to do there, so.
So the public benefit, I mean, would the preservation of East Beach Road, because that's gonna protect East Beach Road with the nourishment of the beach, would that be part of the public benefit?
I'm not CZM, I can't answer that question. It may be, it may not be.
It would be, I think that is a component of something that we've talked about with CZM. However, they would like to see that there's still that public access that is provided through these programs. So you would still need
Well,
to
as long as
secure
we add-
those
if we
access
added that into
easements.
it, but we could also maybe utilize the repair of the road as part of this, and that could be our contribution part on the road.
It could be Chris Capone's work on the thing too. It could be Michael's work on it. It could be, any town employee doing some help to this process can be considered part of the match.
Even
But-
work that our attorneys might do on a project, that can also be considered
Yeah.
match as well.
Right. But I think the first thing is we need the management plan, and then we can apply for beach nourishment. I don't think we can do it the reverse. So we need to come up with a plan. We need to apply for a grant to get that plan, and I think they said about 150 is what we should ask for. So it means, what's that, 35? What's 25% of, I can't do it in my head. But
So, go ahead.
Do we have that much left on offer? Do we have?
We have a local opera. We have some money left.
we'd have to encumber it quickly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The
Not the
local
local.
opera, we're okay until December.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
The Bristol County is June, but the Westport is December. So who's the proper entity to be applying for that grant? Is it planning going to do that, or is it Jim? Like, who should be preparing that
It's the
grant?
chair of the select board.
You wouldn't want me to apply for it because I wouldn't get it.
I don't know. I think it would be.
The select board would be the applicant.
Right.
Right.
We're hoping that the planning office would prepare the application.
Yeah.
All right. So because we're just discussing, we don't have to take action necessarily. But is anybody opposed to them pursuing this grant application? I think that's fine. So I think I think we can find either from ARPA money or matching, like you said. So I think that makes sense to move forward. You said a couple of times that we on the highway department pushing the cobble. I know that they have done that recently, but do we have a policy in place for them to do that, or they're just doing it?
We don't have official policy.
Right. So
Right.
So I'm thinking, and I'm just asked for your input, everybody. I think that we need to direct the highway department or Jim to come up with the policy basically that says that the highway department is going to make every effort to put the cobble.
So I would suggest that you make it an interim policy in anticipation of getting the beach management plan, which may have a different idea of what to do with this stuff. So,
All right. So is everybody okay with Jim putting together a policy and then bring it back to the board on that?
As long as we add what Mr. Wade
Yeah,
said.
and that's what, when we discussed it with CZM, that was their recommendation too. They said, hey, you have this outstanding issue you need to address, you'd like to address now, so do it as an interim policy. You can always come back and change that when you get a beach management plan in place.
Mr. Kurt's on this committee, right? You're on coastal, all right, so at least we're getting input from them too. All right.
So what's the status of the repair of East Beach Road right now? Do you know?
So Chris is getting, the highway surveyor, Chris is getting quotes right now. He received another one today. He's waiting on one more, I believe. And then he's looking to get it done as soon as possible.
Is the plan right now just to basically restore what was already there, or is it looking at the raising the road, like the Climate Resilience Committee?
Restoring what's
Just
there.
restoring what's there.
I'd like to make one comment on that too, but like, on the raising the road part, and we're talking about the utilities, if we had a design of the raising of the road, as the owner of the roadway, we submit that to whoever the utility is, I think it's Eversource out there.
Eversource.
You submit that to Eversource and tell them we want to put this underground utility. They will do the design. It won't cost the town anything. However, at that point, to build it's another whole nother thing, but at least we can get the design.
Well, so part of the Climate Resilience Committee report suggested that we try to focus on redesigning how the electricity gets there, basically, the way I interpret it. And I don't know if any of you remember Paul Schmidt's assistant, who was Anthony Valou. He is now the public outreach person for Eversource. And I've spoken to him about coming down to meet with us to envision if we could bring the electricity either across the bridge or under the river to Cherry and Webb area, instead of coming from East Beach. And he said he'd be happy to get some people together and come. So I'd like your permission to set up a meeting with Jim and Michael and whoever would like to come to at least explore what's possible. That's outlined in here. And they're doing, I attended a Serpent meeting, as I think Steve did too, with Eversource at the last Serpent meeting, and they're redesigning the whole grid in Massachusetts to anticipate the added demand once everybody gets heat pumps and electric vehicles. They have to be able to supply much more electricity. So they're upgrading all the substations and all the wires and stuff. So I think it would be an opportune time to try to mesh that with it. So that would be a redundant supply to the East Beach area, so that it could either come from Horse Neck or it could come from the other end.
Does anybody object to him coordinating the meeting that he just talked about?
No, I would suggest that, but I would also have that, since this gentleman's the community outreach, I would suggest that they add one of the Eversource engineers.
Well, no, he's gonna bring some people with him. So.
Just because when you start talking about crossing the river, now you're talking about different easements that, they're probably gonna need to get from the Army Corps. But we already have an easement down East Beach, so, to create a redundant system under the river, I can see that, but I think it might be a long ways out. Which I don't think we have too many more storms that what we have out there on East Beach is gonna last, that we can wait that long.
Snoop around in Salisbury too, they're going through the same exact thing as us.
Well, it's everybody on the coast.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, yes, we'd like you to please go ahead and let us know when the meeting is scheduled, and thank you for coordinating that. The action for the flood insurance program, is this something that the building inspector needs to be made aware of, or what is this recommendation for what action should we be taking?
It is the responsibility of the building inspector. He is the town's floodplain administrator.
So maybe just revisit with him or re-engage with him on this particular topic, or do you think we need something more than that?
I think that he is perfectly capable of doing it. I don't know that he understands what's required. So, I think from Michael's input to me is that basically anything that you put in the floodplain has to have a permit from the building inspector, be it a shed, a deck, a tight tank, a septic tank, anything that you put in the floodplain has to have a
And the floodplain is much bigger than East Beach.
It's all over.
It's like
It's-
practically
right.
half the town or
Yeah.
more,
Well, and
right?
it's not just the coastal areas too. I mean, it would apply to riverine areas as well. So it's not just the coast that's potentially impacted. It's wherever there's streams, rivers, that. Yeah.
So Jim, maybe we can talk with the building inspector about what resources he might need to make sure that he understands what's applied here, and if he needs any policy direction or guidance or training, or can Can you check with him? I can't think of anything else to direct him to do. Can you?
No, but maybe we'll get him in once, have you got applications for that assistant yet? Maybe we'll have him in for a chat.
Not yet.
All
Not yet.
right, we'll hit him with everything.
So I did a write-up in this report on zoning and floodplain regulations, and there are resources in here that I think would be helpful for him to be applying. I've gone through an FIP training and administered the permit and in previous positions, so I'm fairly familiar with the regulations that would be applied in these areas. And as Jim had said, it's not necessarily that it needs a permit. It needs to be reviewed and found to be reasonably safe from flooding. How local communities go about doing that, how they decide on documenting that process is up to them. FEMA just wants to make sure that all projects in these in the floodplain areas are being reviewed for flood safety.
Were there any other actions that you all were thinking we might want to take to direct people to do stuff for us?
I mean, we also, it should be taken into consideration the Rivers and Streams Act, the buffer zone from the Rivers and Streams Act. So that goes way up throughout the whole town, with a 200-foot buffer.
It's probably a third of the town. So the other thing that I would suggest is that you review the town bylaw that allows trailers, because we're not permitting the way that article is written.
So I think we wouldn't want to change that for this year, but maybe, Paula, can we put that maybe something to look at like end of summer-ish? Because the permits are already being issued right now, right? We wouldn't want to change anything. And with town meeting and everything, I think that one sounds like it can probably wait for a little bit.
So this is a very complicated process. These things are reviewed on a yearly basis, right? So they come, all the trailer permits come before the Board of Selectmen. They're referred to Conservation Commission, Board of Health. They look for septic. Conservation makes sure that they've had a notice of intent, so the uses are permitted. The building inspector does administer the floodplain regulations, mainly on structures, making sure that the elevations meet the floodplain requirements. These are fairly new requirements, and I don't know how, if it's happening yearly, how that applies, if he has to do this every year or not, but it's something to look into. And the other thing is with the trailers, these were, and I didn't realize this until recently, but these were mostly all permitted by zoning variance. So they're exempt from some of the zoning, not exempt, but they're allowed by variance to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So some of these things are permitted. The floodplain in this thing is a zoning bylaw. If they were giving waivers to the zoning bylaw, they may have been given waivers to some of these. So it helps them with the local zoning bylaws, it doesn't help them with the national floodplain stuff. So there's a lot involved in this stuff. And,
Jim, as you were going through this, is there anything else that you needed guidance on from the board to whether to look after?
No, I think the policy on the cobble would be good. We'll get working on that.
Okay. Do we have anything from the public? We didn't get a microphone
Right
set up.
behind you.
Oh, it's behind you. Sorry, I couldn't see. We had a different person setting up the room today.
That's okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Kirkland, president of the East Beach Improvement Association. A couple of things that caught my attention while Mike was speaking and presenting to you guys. And I believe somebody did correct him in his second point that the cobble relocation or pushing to the south side has been on the table a lot, but there's no concrete plan yet. There was an effort made to bring some material back last week after after what was down by the town beach was used to level up the lot a little bit. It wasn't much, but at this point, something's better than nothing. But it's really not going to do anything to protect your road and your infrastructure. 7 piles, 7 dump trucks worth versus hundreds that were removed during the winter. It kind of doesn't need an explanation. In regards to the zoning changes in the permit applications, I respect what Jimmy says is in regards to variances. These things have been there for decades. They are, for the most part, less than 400 square feet, which means they don't qualify as a HUD structure, which means when it comes to the building inspector's authority, it will be somewhat limited because they're RVs. Anything less than 400 square feet. If it's 399 square feet, it's an RV. So you have to take that into consideration. In regards to floodplain issues, they're all mobile. That's why we move them every year. They're not left there annually. Ever since the hurricanes in the 80s and Hurricane Bob in 1991, this practice has been in place for that reason. They're moved in May, removed in November. Axles will work, you make sure always got flat tires, rotted structure, etc. It kind of takes care of itself. So you don't have that issue of a flood per se. And if there's a hurricane, obviously we have an evacuation. We already have a procedure in place which comes out and is explained in the trailer application itself when people sign off and submit for their application. So there are already many things in place which address some of the things that you guys are talking about. When it comes to the flood insurance, East Beach, I know East Beach is not the only situation or the only place where people have to be concerned and have to have insurance. There are structures there. But in our case, they're mobile. If there's a flood, either we're not there because it's the winter, which was evidenced this past year, or they're moved if there's a hurricane. So that doesn't, I don't want to say doesn't apply, but in our case, most of us don't even need insurance unless we worry about liability insurance if somebody breaks their ankle when they visit the house. But as far as flood insurance, it's not a concern. So getting the building inspector involved and to at least look at it sounds like a good idea, but I think he's going to be limited as to what he can do. So, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to address some of these issues. I don't know what direction to go in. I think our biggest concern is the resiliency of the beach and the preservation of the road. Because once you lose the infrastructure, now it's going to open up another can of worms.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? All right, so we have a couple of things you're going to go off and do. We're going to get the policy for the interim policy for the cobble on the road. We're working on the coastal zone management grant application, and you're working with Eversource. And then we're going to talk to the building inspector to see what else he might need to support, you know, making sure we're in compliance with the floodplain stuff we talked about. Is there anything else before we?
No, but if they could just stick around for the next topic, just to at least say the zoning.
We're asking you to please stick around for the next
Just
one. Do you want them here at the table or?
Yeah, it's just if we can just touch base on it. Were you going to speak on this, Jim, or did you want me to update on the infrastructure?
So
Just to let you know the status.
discussion 5B is an update from the Infrastructure Oversight Committee. So is that you?
Yeah, or Jim, if you wanted to, but we reduced the scale of the project because of the showing at the voting. As we know, right from the beginning, it was a long shot to go for the whole thing, but that's what the public wanted, that's what we tried for, and it didn't do as well as we expected. So we reduced it down to the first phase. It would take it to the 88 overpass. I understand planning is going to pull back your zoning too, which is a concern of residents also. Just to make sure so people don't think every zoning is going to get pulled. It's, which two is it again, the topic on it? You remember?
I didn't bring the list,
Oh.
but it's the one for
34.
34 and 37?
Yep.
So Articles 34 and 37 on the warrant.
Can I just back up? So for the first one you said that they're pulling back. So you're talking about the warrant article that currently is asking for $35 million.
It's going to be reduced to, Jim, did you get the bids back? It's going to be 8.1 or is it going to be higher?
Bids are coming in on Friday, so we'll know as of Friday what the contract bids are for each section of Route 6.
So around $8 million,
Approximately.
give or take. So the Infrastructure Oversight Committee is going to recommend an amendment to the article at town meeting.
I didn't get the results yet. Bob Dale was meeting with Steve Forrs at like 5 o'clock, right, as we were coming to the meeting. So I don't have the results yet, but as far as I understand, Steve Forrs will let that be reduced.
Okay,
Because there was some question, and I think, Jim, you double checked too.
He said it would not be an issue.
So right now, the plan is to propose an amendment to that article to reduce it to just that contract amount. And we'll have the contract amount on that
Yes.
at that point in time. So that's for the
Up to 88,
borrowing.
which is contract one of the project. It's up to the 88 overpass and includes the 2 pump stations, which is the main pump station at White's. That needs to be upgraded before we do anything. So that's the least amount of stuff we'd like to see is that section. For the future, while we have the money, what do we have? Over about $2 million in money to help this along, correct? We've got Keating's money, we've got a little bit left of Roderick's.
Yeah, probably about 1.5.
So to help cut that down a little bit, we'll have the exact numbers for town meeting.
So for town meeting, you'll have the
Yes.
total, what the money that's, the exact cost of that portion of the contract
Yes.
and the precise amounts of money that's already been obtained through grants.
Now, that's just the sewer. The water extension has already been approved, the $4 million. That can go without town meeting vote.
Okay.
Then it goes up to Washington Street.
Okay, so let's just talk about that and not the zoning yet.
Right, because
Amanda,
people get
did you-
confused on that.
Yeah,
Amanda,
no,
do you have
I
something?
just wanted to make it clear, because on that Keating money, we also, one of the important things on how we need to start this contract one is because we applied for next year for the same type of grant. What are we looking at on that,
That is sections 2 and 3.
right? But money-wise from Keating.
Well, so we applied for, through Keating and both senators. And so was a $5 million request.
And one of the reasons I'm starting this contract one, because if we lost that money from Keating, it'd be pretty hard pressed to get it again in the next year. So it's
Right.
really important that we educate the public on our need and reason to borrow this amount to start contract one of phase 1 of this.
It's also more of an economic input help than obviously for housing. As we go along, there's more housing. There was more concern with betterment, but it's kind of minimal in the first section, as you're aware. Hebert Terrace has got a cluster of houses. We've got a couple of houses here and there. And we've been straight up front. There's about 80 housing units that'll be built within phase 1. The Carrick project would add another unit, and then behind Porter's wants to develop some units. So
So I think you just need to be super clear and succinct with like whatever pamphlet or brochure or whatever you're producing for the town meeting
right.
about this is how much the contract is, this is how much we already have in hand, and then why we need to do this now, right? I think is really crisp messaging on that's going to be
Well,
really important.
we were kicking around May 1st tonight to see if the committee can get together. But probably a week before town meeting, we hope to have all the numbers down and really push it out there and see if we can do a flyer through economic development that would be readily available to people.
Okay. And then I also want to be clear because there was some confusion on social media. The committee isn't paying for any kind of marketing campaign or any, there are private entities who have been doing some marketing, but the committee itself is not expending funds. The committee is
Infrastructure-
limited to providing facts about the project.
Correct. The Infrastructure Oversight Committee has no budget except for
Right.
the expenditures within the project. We don't even have, we've got the administrative money from Michael that's going toward Mr. Fernandes, but we didn't put any kind of propaganda
Right,
if you will,
there's-
out there. I was talking about through economic
Right,
development, doing
yeah.
a neutral mailing.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on the warrant article, just about the money, and then we'll talk about the plan, the next.
I think that should be
Okay,
it.
so then you also mentioned there's 2 articles that the Infrastructure Oversight Committee is going to recommend we pass over.
No, planning board's
No,
gonna.
planning board. We're going to recommend that the town meeting return those articles to the planning board for further study. That's what the town council suggests.
And
Basically, it's Passover, but I mean, it's not a Passover.
and which are the 2 that they were?
It's
related to?
The STOD-related one, the
Denser housing, gets down to that.
The
denser
congregate housing
housing.
one?
Yeah, that's what's concerning people.
And it's a big area, and people didn't understand it, and I think, you know, we spent months and months going over these zoning changes in anticipation of water and sewer. And the consultant that we used does a lot of work in the Boston area, and I think basically a lot of the issues are the same, but we're a different kind of semi-rural community, so it's different. And so when we went through the public hearings and all the public process and everything was public, we didn't hear the pushback that we got once it became an article. So we just want to rethink what we're doing there and perhaps wait for the MBTA status to become real and make us, actually force us to do something. So that's.
Okay, so that was the
with that
planning
one.
board
That's-
recommended that.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, anything else?
No, just to piggyback that, I went to the MBTA meeting, whatever it was, a week or two ago, and they still don't know when the train's gonna
I
come
know,
on.
it's crazy.
So,
Anyway, the second one is the redesignation of the commercial district for the Narrows section, which I would say is from the Narrows in Fall River to 88, the commercial area. We're gonna change the zoning to be less restrictive. So right now, the lot size in the commercial areas still has to be 60,000 square feet, just like in residential. And when you're in a commercial area, you really don't need that, especially if you have water and sewer. You don't need the room for a septic and a well. So we're gonna withdraw that too, because there's some misunderstanding about the multifamily housing aspect of that. And so we're gonna need housing. I mean, we need housing now, but we're gonna withdraw those. So the two areas you think would have extra housing, if we withdraw these two,
yeah.
won't be possible unless they do
Board-
40Bs.
Through Che, so Borden Street couldn't happen either unless the rules change? Because they've already got the two cluster units there.
Yeah, well,
Three,
that
actually.
was a 40B.
Okay, yeah,
So at least I assume it was. I
I
mean,
believe it was, yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
positive.
I think, yeah, but one of the problems they have too over there is the septic's at the end.
right, so they'll be happy about that. I mean, if we get
Yeah.
water and sewer.
Yeah, they're right on the water at the end.
And you get the one behind Portis that's looking to move forward, and there's septic problems
Right,
over
but
there.
we can do this again next year. I mean, nothing's gonna happen in this year.
Right.
So.
So we should have said at the outset, because this is our first meeting since the election, so the debt exclusion failed by about 60-40, I think.
Roughly, yeah.
yeah.
1,004 and like 20.
It was a very high turnout vote, so so it failed. So you guys, so taking the fact that the debt exclusion failed, you went back and regrouped to kind of made the project making the project a little bit different.
Scale back to the original.
Okay.
Originally, we were only gonna go to the overpass, to the Route 6, Route 88 overpass. Then, obviously they got concerned with the zoning, which we need some zoning change, and like Mr. White just explained, if you wanna do any development there, but too much chatter on social media, we need to address it, and baby steps before we lose all this money.
And there was an article about betterments too. Did you guys talk about that?
That's something the Board of Selectmen need to discuss, is the betterment policy.
So there's three articles related to the sewer. There's Article 14 that essentially appropriates the money and authorizes the borrowing. Article 15 sets some parameters on the betterments, so it would be 20% of the cost of the sewer for that section would be associated with the betterments, and has an interest rate and a couple of other things. And then Article 16 sets up
The board.
the board
Yeah.
or the commission to run it. In
So-
an enterprise fund.
So is the committee recommending that those stay as is?
Yeah, we recommended that went to the Selectmen, that's who controls the betterment, so we threw that back, if you will, back to Jim to present to the Select Board. At this time, I think it's staying, because if the question passes, we're gonna need betterment.
So we're not talking about any action because it's already there.
It's already there.
Yeah.
Not at this point, yeah, I mean, last minute stuff maybe.
But there's no plan to modify it. That's what I was trying to get at with it. So there's no plan right now to
No,
modify
the main thing
that.
was scale back the project. Hopefully it's more palatable to people. Because again, we're gonna lose all this money and try to get some of it while we have this windfall, if you will. And we'd like to do something, and that's like the minimal we can do to get this done.
And then if it passes, then you still need a debt exclusion or other funding. So you have funding
Right.
sources for some of it. So we're
Right.
gonna have to figure out what do we already have funding sources
Has to go
for?
back to the polls.
And then it would, if we still needed a debt exclusion, which is likely that we would, then it would have to go back to an election.
Yes, just so the people that are concerned, because they have to go to town meeting and vote on it, there is a third step if it passes at town meeting, and that's back to the ballot box within, how many days, 60 or
Within 90, well,
within 90?
by September 15th, but the only time they could have it, I think, would be July 23rd.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, because I think that also you can't put it on the state primary ballot, right? You can't put it on you can't put it on the September election, we're already
We
having.
need a special election. I think the town clerk said the only date that may work would be
Yeah,
July
you said-
23rd.
Yeah, it was in July, 23rd.
And I think that would be also too, on utilizing this money, I think that's kind of a cutoff for the fiscal year, so it's kind of important. So I see one of the biggest hurdles for the selectmen to get this through, and the infrastructure oversight committee is still, like it was in the beginning, public education, and kind of see why it failed, and what I see and what happened and how it failed, and what we're seeing on social media right now. It failed because basically it was the focus, and it was decided on the board to focus on the economic benefit of the corridor instead of the public health or the environmental. So like Jimmy knows too, we got, how big is the grant that we got for the PFAS for the Macomber?
It's a $4 million grant.
I mean, the public needs to know that we got that money for that. It's, the stuff on social media is that, the water from Fall River is not any good. Our wells are good. We are the water commissioners. I guess being the chair now would be the chair of the water commissioners. We also have I think it was April, a consumer confidence report for the public water supply needed to go out to the customers. So I believe, I did reach out to Paul Ferland and Fall River, and the consumer, because that was one of the things, the water from Fall River isn't any good, and this has been going on for a lot of years, that, our water from Fall River isn't any good. So this is I guess it's DEP mandated, the consumer confidence report. So I think what we need to get this report to the public so they can see it prior to an election, so that they know what we're trying to give them is what they need. And there was one in 2023. It sent Fall River, we're the customer to Fall River, so we're the consumer for Fall River, and they sent it to us. But as water commissioners, we need to get this to our customers. And I'm not sure if, Jimmy, you could probably follow this up with Linda. Have we done that? Did they get that in their water bills?
I don't believe those were sent out in the water bills.
Okay, because
Don't know what
Paul
the-
was telling me that that's kind of the direction how they usually do it, so I
I
haven't
can
seen
check
it.
with Paul and see how they do it, and then I'll check with Linda.
And we should have got it, as a town from Fall River. And I think the deadline was April for the 2024. He did send me the 2023. I couldn't open it, so we tried printing it before the meeting, but I didn't get it out there. The other thing is so we have an obligation to honor our public water supplies. So Linda handles all of that stuff. So the reports to the DEP on our public water supplies that belong to the town, like we have them here. There's numerous ones throughout the town, like the VFW has them, all that stuff. I think the public on Route 6 needs to be aware of what's in those reports. One of the other problems, we're going down the corridor, and a lot of this stuff's been tested for septic. So they weren't tested for PFAS, but there's numerous wells along Route 6 that are full of sodium. That's it's on the edge of Mass Highway. So these wells are all contaminated down the corridor because of Mass Highway. So they're under the influence that they have good wells. They need to understand. There's also a report from the DEP on a public well in town that's privately owned, that exceeds the eminent hazard concentration of PFAS. And the DEP is further investigating that. So as we move forward, I mean, this first step will help that. You know, we get the PFAS grant, but we need to expand on that for that reason, instead of letting the public believe that their wells are good. You know, I mean, yeah, a lot of them are, but there's a lot of them that aren't. You know, some of them, there's no landfill that this house is in. And this stuff on Facebook was kind of a little bit disturbing, that, you know, they're shooting down the quality of the water coming from Fall River and assuming that their water's okay. So I think moving forward for the town meeting, I mean, I'd like to see those reports of what the status of all the town's public wells are. What's our report look like to DEP? Did we send the report to DEP? You know, I've talked to a number of private well, you know, and they're telling me some of these small restaurants, they're reporting to the DEP like they're supposed to. You know, it's cost them like $6-7 grand a year just for that testing and reporting. We're supposed to be doing the same thing.
So
That's how this was picked up.
I support the project. I am completely supportive of the project. I'm supportive of the big project, because I think it needs to be done. But, and I do think that we didn't emphasize enough the health risks. We let people say, my well is fine. They don't actually know that their well is fine, and that's a problem. I think, though, my opinion is that the people in that area are afraid. They are afraid of how expensive this is going to be for them, and they're afraid of what is going to happen to their neighborhood when we allow these multifamily housing. And I don't think that we did a very good job of acknowledging that fear and putting it to rest. So I kind of hear you saying, I think and you didn't say this, but they kind of should be a little more afraid of their water than they actually are. So that the thing they should be afraid of is the safety of their water that they're drinking. But I think that what they're afraid of now is the change that they're going to see in their neighborhoods and the cost to these individuals. So I actually, it's a hard sell to raise your taxes. I also think there's a component of, I'm never going to see a water sewer. Why the heck should I pay for that? You know, there is a component of that. Like, I just don't want to raise my taxes. But I think in the 2 weeks before town meeting, my opinion is we should do what we can to allay the fears, particularly the financial fears. I think it needs to be really clear. If I don't even know if you're one of these 80 houses that this is going to go by, this is how much it's going to cost you. I don't think we did a good job of talking about that. And I don't think we did a good job about talking about that $10,000 is over a 20-year period. It's not, you know, you're not tomorrow getting a $10,000 bill. I just think that fear component is something that you might be able to address. I think that removing the zoning is good to go send them back and kind of rework them with different input, but it's still not going to address the fear of people don't want multifamily homes up there. And so we have to be able to tell the story of either why we have to zone for multifamily homes, or how multifamily homes can really work and make that maybe a walking area and a whole, because you guys have talked about this, right? Like a whole walking area. It could really improve the neighborhoods up there to have more dense housing, and they just haven't seen it yet. So I don't think you're going to be able to put that together in 2 weeks, but I think what you can do to alleviate the fear is going to be what you can do before a town meeting. That's just my 2 cents.
I mean, the neighborhoods that need the water, I mean, Jim, so we've already determined that there's no betterment for the water coming through. I mean, this water's gonna go by the house and they're not gonna be charged for it. There's also, even if the sewer came through, the seniors, there's deferments that, you know, it's the same thing. It'll go on the house, they won't have to make a payment until the house is transferred or sold or whatever.
Right, that's the kind of information I think needs to be really clear. Yeah.
The other thing that's part of the water issue is the same day that we got the override, that exclusion, I'm sorry, failed, DEP made a new regulation with EPA for PFAS. So now it is officially 4 parts per trillion instead of 19 parts per trillion. And we already have public wells up on Sanford Road that are not meeting the old regulation, let alone the new. And I think DEP, that's what you're referring to, is looking at it now. But it's all over town. The harbor water supply would fail today if it had to comply with the 4 parts per trillion. And I think a lot of wells, especially in the north, would fail too because of what's been in the groundwater.
And the DEP, they're coming out with this, but there's a lot of new technology, like even to help the harbor area with treatment systems.
Treatment, right.
For this type of stuff. But one of the things that happened is with this whole septic regulation, when the DEP came knocking on the door, we told them, we had the integrated water plan. We're moving forward with sewer and water in the north end. So we didn't even have to go forward with because what they really wanted with that was a water management permit so that they could control us. So people are under the assumption now that, well, when they come back, the worst that's gonna happen is they're gonna make us put septics in. And when they come back for the north end, the benefit to the south was that the north sewering will lower the total load to the river, which will allow them not to have to put denitrification systems in, because it's a number. But pushing water and not sewer in the north end, yeah, that's the most important thing that I think we need to do, because that's for public health. But that does nothing for the environmental impact to the river. And when the DEP comes back, they're not gonna come back and say to the north end, you're gonna have to put septics in. They're gonna come back and tell us that it has to be sewer. So this is what is going to happen in the north end. The south, if they don't get the total load down, they will make them do those septics. But the north end, it's not gonna be like, hey, we get all these septics in up here, we're covered. They're gonna make us do the sewer. And when the DEP comes back,
They've made all the towns and cities on the Cape do this. The regulation's in place. Falmouth has approved a $200 million debt exclusion to sewer more of their town. And Brewster has approved a $1 billion debt exclusion. And they're sucking up all the SRF money.
yeah,
So,
and if
I
we
mean-
lose it, it's going that way. But one of the other things, because that's the cheapest way to go with it. But I'm sorry.
So I think there's a lot of education in a really short amount of time. I think people want to make sure that we're being very transparent. I also, in addition to the fear that I talked about, there's a very, at least on the social media, which is not necessarily representative, people don't trust us. They don't trust us, they don't trust the committee, they don't trust the planning board. And we're not going to solve that in 2 weeks either, but I think the best thing we can do is actually, if we talk about a report, if we're mentioning a report, we need to post it somewhere that people can find it, so we're not, because I did hear criticism of, it's funny, because this was just a couple months ago that, there was an outcry and a meeting at UMass Dartmouth and everything about the septic, and now everybody's forgotten all about that, but it's hard to find that information, and it's hard to counteract when somebody's saying, oh, that's not true, where's the letter from the DEP? It's really hard to find the letter from the DEP that said that, but, all right, so I'm looking forward to anything else that we didn't cover yet on it.
One thing
Yeah, go
back
ahead.
as I remembered was, so when you're talking about those communities down in Cape, I mean, the reason their numbers are so high is they need to build sewer treatment plants. We're fortunate that there's enough capacity in Fall River to
That we
take
don't have to
us.
build,
So
yeah.
we're just paying for the infrastructure in town.
Right.
So, again, it's the same thing with, one of the other things that came out on the water, just before the vote, the rates were going up in Fall River. And so everybody, this is what it's gonna cost us. Well, one of the reasons the rates are going up in Fall River is they have an enterprise fund, and they have a surplus of water. And if they could sell more water, they could keep the rates lower. And in fact, they've already told us that we could give you a cheaper rate if you use more water. And then we're looking at, I also found out recently, in the south with Tupper, they bought the property over next to Dave's Beach to further expand the ability for their water system. So, I mean, we have a lot more in our favor, and it did seem like a lot of money to the town for this 34 million, but this opens up the door for these neighborhoods to get these $4 million grants to fix them, because the next one's gonna have to go up Sanford Road, and it's gonna happen. And I mean, fortunately, we have the sewer, we'll have the sewer in that area, and we can take care of that.
Also, I think it's an amazing thing that Fall River wouldn't be asking us for a capital charge to pay for some of their infrastructure.
Well, they got the grant because it serves multi-communities years ago, correct?
It's something we've always kind of looked into. I haven't been able to find it, but my understanding going way back when the regional plant was built, and this goes back into the late 60s, it was built as a regional plant. They were funded federally, and it was with the intent that surrounding communities could tie in.
I think Sean Leach might have the details on that. And they have all our water rights, so.
All right, anything else on the infrastructure?
No, thank you for
All
sticking
right,
around.
thank you,
Appreciate it.
gentlemen.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So next item is the town administrator reports.
Most of the stuff we've kind of talked about already, but I do want to say, the first one is the town did receive a PFAS grant, right? This is kind of got lost in the shuffle with the overall Route 6 thing, but this is a $4 million grant, no match. It's probably the highest in the state, still trying to get a list to see what other communities got, but if it's not the highest, it's one of the highest awards that was done. It'll allow water to be extended along Route 6 from the current Housing Authority property easterly to Washington Street. It'll allow water to go down Osborne Street to the Macomber School and then loop it back down Gifford Road to Route 6. There's a lot of people that put work into this, the Infrastructure Oversight Committee, Mr. Ouellette, Mr. Soares, Mike Barris from the Planning Office worked on the grant, Maureen May. You know, a lot went into this, and you know, it wasn't coincidence. I mean, we had plans ready to go. It's ARPA funding. They needed to get it spent fairly quickly, so things fell into place in that. But this is a substantial grant that the town's getting. The water will go in without cost to the residents. It'll be stubbed to their property lines so they can tie in. They'll have the standard connection fee, but it's not a betterment. You know, it's probably less than $1,000. That hasn't been determined yet, but they don't have to tie in, but it'll be there if they need it. And there are some contaminated wells over there, and that's why the grant did come through, right? So we have a public water supply, and the public water supply is not necessarily owned by the town. It's a water supply that services the general public, and it can be for residential properties, or it can be for restaurants, or any well that services the public. We have a well up near Washington Street that has 30 parts per trillion of PFAS. The new regulations are 4 and 10. You know, we have a public water supply well near Gifford Road and Osborne Street that has high in manganese, which exceeds EPA levels. We have another public water supply along Route 6 in the Housing Authority area that is in the teens for PFAS. So it's out there, and I'm not saying it's in all the private wells, or it may not even go beyond these wells, but it might. But private wells don't get tested for this. The public wells are required to be tested, so that's why we know they're there. They saw it up on Sanford Road with the church, was a public water supply. That was tested. When they determined there was PFAS there, they actually offered tests to some of the private wells, and those were tested, and they found that it did expand out there. So it's a good thing that we're getting this grant, and a lot of work from a lot of people went into it. So
No, and the other thing too, like with the financing committee, and, you know, we had the Kleinfelder report. We spent a lot of money on the Kleinfelder report that explained that this is what we needed to do moving forward, an integrated water plan. It's not like we just decided, you know, at that meeting, we're gonna go forward with this. That was said.
in that plan itself, the integrated water plan, I think it's page 39 and 40, it actually shows a map of wells that have had issues, either high bacteria counts or high nitrate counts. They may not still be there now, they could have been addressed, but you know, it's generally in that area along Route 6, like in between Gifford Road and going easterly up towards Washington Street.
No, I mean, they had a lot of the wells that dried up during the drought, so those were groundwater wells. So these public wells, most of them are artesian, so they're testing the aquifer. So in that report from Mass Highway, it says that the contamination is in the groundwater and it's migrating into the aquifer. So that's why those other results are a little more important.
Right, anything else? Oh, you had one more on here.
Yeah, we just said the PFAS drinking water regulations we've talked about already. The cherry sheets, the House Ways and Means Committee presented their budget proposal for FY25. That's this kind of the second step in the process. The governor comes out with their budget, House comes out with theirs, now it goes to the Senate. The House had a slight increase in revenues to the town, about 95,000, but that can change as it goes through the Senate and as it's discussed. So I think the good thing is we're heading in the right direction. We're not going in the wrong direction. So I think our budget right now going to town meeting is still in good shape. And that's all I have for my report.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, should we send a letter of support of that Ways and Means budget for the Senate?
Certainly could.
I motion that we send a letter supporting the current, what's the proper term, Ways and Means budget?
The
Yeah.
House, well,
House.
at least not the House version necessarily, but the House local aid allocation.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's a motion.
Yes, it is.
All right, second.
I just wanted to clarify,
Okay.
to make it a motion.
Yep.
Did somebody second it?
Was that a second or were you
Was it-
making it?
I was making it.
Second.
Okay.
Well, it's
Okay,
all
so
right.
there's
He's
a motion
new.
and a
Give him a
second.
break.
This is a motion and a second to support the local aid portion of
Of
this
the-
budget
yes,
to,
the House version,
to
yes.
the House version local aid
Yeah.
to our senator.
Was all right, we just don't want less.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you, Jim. The next item is to approve the minutes of March 25.
Craig gets it.
We didn't, when we reorganized the board, we did not reorganize the clerk position.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Let's
great.
go back to the reorganization of the board. So Manny, would you like to stay on as clerk, or would you like,
He did his time.
I'm not interested.
would you like to move Craig Dutra as the clerk?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
There is, that's unanimous, and you'll be the new, you're the new clerk.
Almost got rid
Thank
of it,
you for
Craig.
volunteering. But Manny, the March 25th minutes,
Did you get to it?
I didn't get a chance.
Yeah, we'll hold off on this.
so we'll hold up on that, and then
April
April 8th, okay, so we'll hold on those. The report on the bill warrant, so usually,
That's Dick, right?
so Craig, you'll
Yeah.
recall back in the day, we all had to go sign the bill warrant. But what we learned is that we can designate somebody to sign the bill warrant for us, and so that we don't all have to come to town hall. So, did it get signed?
It did get signed?
Okay,
Yep, Dick signed it.
do we need to sign it?
No.
All right,
Okay.
so Dick, I'm sure everybody's fine to leave Dick on as a bill warrant. Does anybody want to be the alternate?
I could be the alternate.
All right, so
Filling them up.
do we need to vote on that? Probably.
Did you see that, Tanisha? All right, I'll move that Dick Brewer remain as the primary, well, be the primary chair, signer on the warrant, and Craig be the alternate.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Craig. We've signed you up for 2 things now.
Yeah.
All right, so now as we go around and talk about liaison committee reports and suggestions for future agenda discussion. So we'll start with Manny. Anything that we haven't talked about yet?
I think we kind of hit.
Yeah, we hit the big meeting. so.
Okay, Steve, anything that we haven't
No, I
talked
agree.
about?
We did the same, just a bunch of other regional meetings like the train meeting and whatnot, and nothing, still not knowing what's going on with it. So that was kind of, I mean, even though it's gonna cost us on the build out, it's still a bummer for everybody that's been waiting for this, that they don't have a date yet. They still gotta test the train, and there's certain things they have to do that they don't have dates to do yet. So that was obviously a big concern with Fall River. So nothing on the horizon. Just to remind people that the CERTA still has free buses, to my knowledge. I don't remember the end date on that. Dick hopefully can update us at the next meeting.
Does the bike committee did something?
They were supposed to do the recycling this weekend. I didn't follow up to see if they did it because it poured Saturday. That's the day I was going to go down. I didn't get a hold of Gail today. I had a jamming day, and I caught up on stuff on the way back. So I do not know how that went. I
Okay.
don't think she sent an email. If she did, I'll send it to the board.
So we're not sure if they're open for bike recycling yet? They probably are.
Unless they did it Sunday, but Saturday it was raining pretty
Yeah.
good. So I don't know. I didn't get a status.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
I don't think I had any committee meetings since we talked. There's an Internet Advisory Committee meeting Wednesday where we're gonna talk about whether we wanna pass over the article for the municipal light plant. So we haven't taken action on that yet, but it's likely we will discuss passing over that article. And Craig, you haven't been on any committees. Do you have any liaison reports or anything you wanna talk about?
Nothing
No?
new, I mean, the housing trust is, I think I reported that we would be looking for someone to replace Betty Ann. We should notify the bank, and then we probably will have now my seat. Because that is, I'm taking Ann's place on the Affordable Housing Trust, and I was an at-large member. So that opens up as well.
Okay.
So that will be something we should advertise, if we haven't been advertising for that committee, but I think we were at full capacity.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there's still an opening on the assessors for an interim appointment. And this is also the time of year where committees should start looking at whether people want to stay on or not. It's going to be the end of June before we know it. Okay. Is there any, there's no one from the public for comments and statements for the public. We are going to have an executive session tonight. We're going to come back to open meeting only for the purposes of adjourning. We will conduct no business after the executive session. So I will entertain a motion pursuant to the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, where the chair declares an open meeting will have a detrimental effect. To A, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the Westport Permanent Firefighters Association, Local 1802. B, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, the Highway Department, AFSCME, Council 93, Local 1701. C, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the Westport Police Association. D, Laura Hadley versus Town of Westport. E, approve the minutes of March 25th, 2025.
So move, Steve Willett.
Second,
You have to say your name.
Craig Dutra.
All in favor?
And so is I.
Aye, Steve Willett.
I, Shauna Shufelt.
I, Craig Dutra.
And we are we?
It's been a while. No, just let the public know we're gonna come out. Do we have to vote on anything in open?
No, I just said that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Only to adjourn.
Okay, just to let the board know, Gail didn't send an email, so I don't know the status on the bike recycling.
All right, thank you. So the open meeting is not adjourned. The open meeting is recessed. We're in executive session.
Okay, so we're good. We're legal, John.